Hello and welcome to Homicide Hobbies. I'm Andy,
And I'm Claire.
and we're here to talk about some of the disturbing things that go on in the world, past and present. We feel like not knowing doesn't mean the crazy doesn't exist.
So we're going to scar you with the knowing.
Enjoy. So, what do you got for us today, Claire?
So today, we're headed to the waterfall capital of the world.
New York?
Nope. Just 50 miles to the west of Niagara Falls. It's home to one of the largest botanical gardens, boasting over 2,700 acres.
Ohio?
West of Niagara Falls.
Oh.
Okay,
Oh.
Canada. We are headed
Oh,
to...
you're a fucking asshole. I was thinking United States. I was sitting like, God, you got me. You cheat, you dirty scoundrel. Using my tricks against you. Or wait, my tricks against me.
And this is why we don't record early. So get ready, everyone. It's not going to make any sense.
Do you ever?
We're headed to specifically Hamilton, Ontario in 1946. And if you ain't good with your dates, it's just after World War II ended and everyone's still recovering from the toll that took. We're going to start on Saturday morning, March 16th, 1946, when 5 school children would be walking seemingly innocently near the falls, when all of a sudden they became murderous children.
What?
Just kidding. But they're going to be taking a hike near some waterfalls when they happen upon a man's torso.
Ew.
Specifically just the torso, void of arms, legs, and its head.
Extra ew.
Yeah, apparently having been sawed off.
Obviously.
Well, you never know. Animals could have picked, I guess.
Ew. Those poor kids. Could you imagine that?
Yeah, I couldn't, because I was just like, eh. I mean, I guess the advantage is it's still cold, so it wasn't like a midsummer and it's a bloated, full of bugs, festering kind of meat in the full sun.
How old were these kids?
So they said school age, but I assumed that was like 11, 12.
Yeah, because school age ranges from 5 to 18. Give us a smaller range, people.
Well, I figured in the 40s, old enough to be hiking on their own.
That could be 5 years old. In the 40s?
It's possible. Well, again, these children don't come back up, Andrea, but that's what discovers this torso. Now, the body is identified as John Dick, a 40. He's our victim, Ham, so suck it up.
Yeah, I'm not sucking nothing.
Get it out of your system. Dick. He's a 40-year-old Russian immigrant, having lived in Canada for the last 21 years, and was a driver for the Hamilton Street Railway. So, now that they've identified him, they gotta go break the news to John's wife, 25-year-old Evelyn. And when they break that news to her, she goes, "Well, don't look at me! I don't know nothing about it." Which is a really weird reaction to have when somebody tells you they've located your husband's torso and are trying to figure out how that happened to be a thing and why he's off on the side of a mountain.
That wouldn't have been my reaction.
I don't think that would have been anybody's reaction.
You're wrong. It was Evelyn's.
Oy. So naturally, the police are going to be like, yeah, why don't you come on down to the station and we can continue this chitty chat. Now, I got to put a pin in that and give you some background on Miss Evelyn. So Evelyn McLean Dick was an... You have real problems. Like, they runneth deep. So Evelyn, since apparently her last name is a trigger for you, was an only child from a Scottish immigrant family. Her mom is Alexandra, who was a stay-at-home mom, and her dad, Donald, worked for the Hamilton Street Railway. Now, Donald supposedly had a habit of stealing from the fare boxes, so that way his family of 3 could live beyond their means.
Stealing's not necessarily the most recommended way to do things, but all right.
So Alexandra was bound and determined to make a better life for her daughter any which way she could and get her into in with the snooty falooties so that way they could change their stars. Unfortunately, she didn't do too good with the schooling, that's Evelyn that is, at her fancy pants private school, but she was purty and had sex appeal. So Alexandra would start setting her up on dates with older men.
Ew.
Now, by the time she's 24, she's pretty well known around town as being a party girl. Now, I assume this is like an escort situation because she's making money some way. And she also has all the pretty things and is financially well off. And that's not how she started off.
Her mom pimped her out?
Pretty much.
It's disgusting.
So again, she's financially well off even though she didn't actually ever work a regular job. She would dress expensively, and she would later testify to have had sex with over 150 lawyers and businessmen in the Hamilton area. And I was like, oh my God, is that everybody?
I understand why she got the last name she got. Sorry.
Now, even though by the time she's 24, she isn't married, she would have 3 children.
No.
Heather Marie, born in 1942.
Does she know who the fathers are?
I would imagine not. Dude, at 24, she's had sex with 150 men. She's practically, like, just rolling over onto the next bed.
That's really gross.
Well, it's really gross that her mom's setting her up on all this.
That's really gross.
Mm-hmm. Heather Maria was born in 1942. A stillborn baby was born in 43. Oh. And then her son, Peter David, in 1944. Would you stop?
She has a son that ends up named Peter Dick. She just can't get away from the dick.
No, so she's not married. So he was Peter McLean.
Like John McClane.
Well, if you'd pipe down, I'll finish telling you about Peter.
All right.
So she has Peter in 1944. When that happens, Evelyn's dad would say, "You're not bringing another kid into this house." Mind you, Heather is about 2 at this point. So I feel like it was too much of...
temper tantrums?
Mm-hmm. So he tells her that, you're not bringing another one in this house. So instead of her bringing the baby boy home, she would let her parents know that she turned him over to the Children's Aid Society for him to be adopted. In June of 1945, Heather, Evelyn, and Alexandra, which is her mom, would move into their own apartment, and Donald would stay in the family home. I feel like there had to be some sort of a divide after that point.
Yeah, mom's enjoying her cut of the high life.
Her daughter's vagina money.
Yeah.
And
way to put that, but yes.
But I was also confused because if you're going to pimp her out, how do you also get upset at she's cranking out children left and right?
The husband wasn't pimping her out. It was the wife. He disagreed, but he just let her do the child raising.
Yeah.
It was the 40s. It wasn't the man's job to get involved.
Well, by mid-September, Evelyn would come home and tell her mom that she was going to marry John Dick, apparently under the impression that he had plenty of money to keep her living all cushy and in fancy things. And if you're wondering how this little lady explained away her daughter, she would tell John that she was a widow of a naval officer who died in World War II, which is completely believable since we're on the ends of World War II. Now, Alexandra would be like, I don't know this man, and he's also a blue-collar worker, and this is not at all the plan that I had, and I'm not having it. All this hard work that I put in for you to marry somebody in the low to middle class? But Evelyn is like, I don't give a shit, and she would marry John October 4th without either of her parents there. Well, I figured like justice of the peace style.
You think her dad would have been more supportive, because now he definitely doesn't have to worry about taking care of her. Or them children.
So she would make her way home, minus her husband. And within the same week, the jig was up. She realized that her new husband didn't make the kind of money she thought he did. So my guess would be, in like a little bit of a temper tantrum way, she gets back to work and goes out to the movies with 25-year-old steel worker Billy Boza and follow the movie up with a little bit of a pickle tickle. Now, John would be aware of her extracurriculars and would be determined to keep his marriage. So he would go to Evelyn's dad in an effort to get him to help make his wife respectable. And Donald would be like, I am not helping you with this problem. She's off my hands.
How old is she now? 25? Like 25?
Mm-hmm.
That's because in 25 years, her pa couldn't keep her a respectable young lady when she was a minor.
That's because her mother was peddling the pussy.
But that's why the father was like, don't look at me.
She's been keeping the bed lights on.
Them red lights.
Now, October 31st, Evelyn would buy a house, and her, John, Alexandra, and Heather would all move in together.
God, pussy really does pay.
But when I was just like, holy hell. Alexandra would claim they argued all the time over women and money on the occasion that John was home. I was surprised at the arguing over women because I would have thought it's an argument over his wife's a whore for the entire town. It was probably an argument over syphilis, and her mother was just like, this lady is a real problem.
No, what it was he was like, ugh, there's something dripping out of you still. I'm just going to go find me a new lady.
Ew.
And then her whole thing was, you don't appreciate all my hard work?
It paid for this house. Anyway, all the arguing would eventually come to a head. John would finally have had enough of that life and move out on Christmas Eve and start living with his two sisters and their husbands at their farmhouse until he doesn't show up for work March 6th. Bear in mind that John's torso is found on the 16th of March. So now we're going to fast forward back to the police wanting to talk to little Evelyn about how that came to be.
Did she try to spread her legs for that interrogation?
I'm surprised she didn't, but not that I know of.
They didn't make enough money.
No, it's because she was fucking all the attorneys. Apparently she stayed on the other side of the justice system. Now, during the investigation, the police would have several conversations with Evelyn to try to get to the bottom of, again, how her husband's torso ended up on the side of a waterfall trail thing. Now, each time they talked to her, they would get a different statement. She would waffle on dates and times, as well as how involved she may have been. In one version, she would say that Italian gangsters from Windsor were hired by her boyfriend Bill to fix John real good. Another version had Bill as the murderer. Another version, she would admit to being involved with disposing of his body. Another version, she would claim she was there when he was shot, but she didn't help plan anything. Now, I'm sure at some point you're wondering why Bill would murder John, other than that he's already fucking the guy's wife. According to Evelyn, Bill was mad that John was talking trash about him and spreading the word around town. So I feel like on John's quest to get his wife to be more
respectable,
wifely, he was trashing her boyfriend to maybe get him to go away, thinking that if he can just get Bill to stop fucking his wife, they can get things back on track.
No.
However, poor John, she's kind of a bit of a gold digger in the sense that once she realized he didn't have money anyway, there wasn't anything in the world he could have done. But that's what she would tell the police is why Bill killed John. Now, March 21st, Bill would be brought up on charges of vagrancy and having an unregistered revolver. Now, Evelyn was held without bail while her house and her dad's house were searched. Now, during that search, they'd find a bunch of things that were John's, including some blood-coated buttons from a streetcar driver's uniform. During their search, they'd also find $2,000 worth of tickets from Donald stealing the fares and arrest him on theft. Then, when they make it to Evelyn's attic, they come across a chunk of cement and a small leather suitcase, later to be discovered to conceal the remains of a male infant that was wrapped in a skirt that had on its waistband E. McLean.
Ew.
So evidently, baby Peter...
She killed her baby instead of giving it up?
She did. Which is why I figure the whole... I don't know if her mom was aware of that. I would think not.
It's disgusting.
But I also feel like that's what was the divide of her dad said not to bring him home. And I thought how incredibly sad that she encased him. I don't know if it was a case of she didn't know how to get rid of him, or she couldn't really...
If you kill your own baby, you're a piece of shit. I'm sorry. There was no sentiment to it because she turned around and moved out on her own. She could have brought her kid with her.
Ah, that's true. And she didn't bring that hunk of cement.
It's disgusting.
Now, they would also discover a car with blood-stained seats and a necktie that was later determined to be John's blood on it.
How? It's the 40s.
Well, damn it, Andrea. If they have the torso... I'm going to look it up real fast.
You're out of time.
I don't know if it's just from talking to her. Damn it, Andrea. You made me close out my notes.
I did not. I simply asked a question.
Well, it's not like I would imagine during the investigation of...
They probably just determined it was his tie and therefore assumed it was his blood.
Well,
which makes sense.
But anyhow, they would discover a car with blood-stained seats and a necktie that was later determined to be John's that had blood on it. So other than it's his necktie, there's blood-stained seats. I think that they connected the dots there. Now, March 29th, Evelyn would be officially charged with John's murder as well as her infant son Peter's. Bill would also be charged with the murder of Peter and for John and Peter because they assumed since they were boyfriend and girlfriend. Now, it would later be dropped for Bill because he didn't know her when she had Peter, so he couldn't have helped get rid of a baby that he wasn't fucking Evelyn then.
It's a disgusting way to get rid of a charge.
Now, the police would continue to investigate, and on April 15th, 1946, they would charge 68-year-old Donald and 61-year-old Alexandra in connection with John's death. Eventually, the charges on Alexandra are dropped because they don't have evidence, and she would also agree to testify against her daughter in exchange for immunity.
That woman is disgusting.
Yeah, no, initially when I was like, oh, well, that came right up there, but I guess if you're going to peddle her as a prostitute to make your way, that why not just testify to save your own skin there too?
She's disgusting.
Mm-hmm. But at Donald's house and Evelyn and Alexandra's house, they would find all this evidence. So at Donald's, they'd find bullet casings, and then they'd also find burnt human remains, including remains of bone and teeth, and ashes that were scattered outside. So I don't know if it was a case of they threw the torso out because it was taking too long to burn everything down and they really weren't getting rid of everything. So I don't know why they opted to throw the torso other than thinking that maybe he wouldn't be identified.
Yeah, I think it'd be that one. Mainly because where were they burning it?
Inside.
Like the fireplace?
Yeah.
I'm going to guess maybe the torso didn't fit and they didn't want to cut it open because it'd be like a piñata of things that came out.
Yeah. Well, Evelyn's trial would start October 7th, 1946, which talk about speedy. Donald and Bill would have their own trials that would come later. Every statement that Evelyn had made was not in the presence of an attorney, but were entered into evidence with the wicked woman she was and how flim-flamsy she was with her stories, not to mention her weird-ass reactions to hearing her estranged husband was dead in a brutal way. All that was entered in as evidence. So the first day of her trial, she would be dressed up in a chic black dress with black gloves, brand new shoes with gold bows, real shiny earrings, and her nails and lipstick matched. The newspapers would go on and on about how purty she was and how she looked more like a movie star than a murder defendant.
I'm sure she loved that.
I think she did too, because I think she forgot she was on trial for murder.
She got her 5 seconds of fame.
Now, everybody seemed genuinely captivated by her appearance, and all the news articles were written by women. Initially, I was thinking that maybe they weren't, but then I guess if you're describing what she's wearing, a feller wouldn't be so descriptive. But they made the newspaper articles, it was almost more like something written for a fashion piece than it was for a murder trial coverage. Because, again, that's what they would focus on. Now, mind you, that was during her pre-trial also, is when they were yapping about what she was wearing and how purty she looked. But by the time, like, towards the end of the trial...
She done looked like she was rode hard and put away wet.
No, so early on during, like, the pre-trial and she's all frou-froued up, they even yap about her fur coat and her dark hat, and she'd even pose for photographs for the paper and really seemed to enjoy the attention that the trial brought for her.
Naturally.
Now, part of the obsession would be the denial, and she wouldn't give a formal interview. So it's just like the only thing that they could report on is what they saw. And since they saw what she was wearing, that was part of the excuse of why they would harp on her clothes, her hairstyle, her cosmetics, even her facial expressions during testimonies. Now, Evelyn would testify at her own trial, but reporters were not authorized to publish her testimony, which I thought was interesting because there are articles about everybody else's testimony, but they weren't allowed to publish what she said.
It's interesting.
Again, with the papers being obsessed over Evelyn in every sort of way, they'd also get obsessed over what she's eating and the fact that she was gaining weight. 15 pounds from her preliminary trial to her actual trial. And I did some blinking of like, the fuck is this newsworthy for?
What it is those women started becoming haters.
Now, part of the nowadays excuse for why everybody was focused on what she was wearing and that she was getting fat in the jail.
She's pregnant.
I thought that was going to be the route too, but no.
You don't know. She could have hit another baby.
It could have been the guards.
It probably was.
Well, no, part of it was because during World War II, everybody was on rations and there was a scarcity of food. And this is coming out of World War II and people are still trying to recover. So because of that short supply of all the things, that's why they would be focused on, she's porking up real fast. How is she when we're still, like, coming out of that? She's eating too good. And then one officer would be overheard saying that she was always hungry. She never failed to scrape the bottom of her porridge bowl. Which I was like, oh my God, this is so fucked up. And then one news article would report that she shared a meal with the sheriff and 2 lawyers. And I was like, probably because she was fucking all of them. Where she finished her hefty chicken dinner before the men did, then proceeded to eat 4 large slices of apple pie. And again, I did the blinking of, this is in the news, Andrea.
This is disturbing.
It was. Now, then the reporters who were reporting on all of her hefty chicken dinners and how she could pork that down faster than the fellers could, they were probably standing there with the spoon or the fork right near their mouth as she's like just heaving it into her pile.
What it is her throat has been stretched out. She's like an anaconda. She can just pop her jaw and swallow it whole.
Well, then the reports would turn to her black dress being skin tight and her squirrel coat being tightly buttoned. It's like,
that's not what I thought you were going to say.
But anyway.
I thought you were going to say there's evidence of a squirrel popping out. I was like, that is not.
Ew, Andrea.
Well, they're talking about everything else and her skin tight dress. It's not me.
9 days of evidence and reports of how John met his violent end would be made because Evelyn seemed bored and unfazed by every detail, and everybody in the courtroom that was staring at Evelyn while these details are being said were shocked by, she seemed like she was listening to all sorts. She couldn't have cared less.
I mean, if it's her estranged husband and she didn't actually do it... Oh, never mind. I was going to compare it to when Mom and Dad first were separated, but Mom would have ate that shit up.
Yeah, like a hefty chicken dinner.
That's pretty good.
But, so, again, since Evelyn didn't do any interviews or anything like that, they're clinging to every movement she made so that they can have something to write about. But people would be crazy obsessed with the goings-on of Evelyn and would wait for hours before anything started outside the courtroom to get a glimpse of her while they're bringing her inside. They were so crazy that when they would break for lunch and everyone is supposed to get the fuck out, some ladies tried to hide in the bathroom so that they could get a good seat when everything resumed. They were eventually found and told to get out.
That's weird.
There were like 20 women in the bathroom. I'm sure it wasn't noiseless, and I feel like the bailiff is probably like about to leave, and then he hears all the breathing echoing in the bathroom. He's just like...
Or probably all the clanking of their high heels.
Mm-hmm. But her attorney would try to paint Evelyn as a good little girl and how the physical task of cutting up a body was so beyond her capabilities as a lady.
The good old 40s. Them women folk done can't do none of that.
I knew you'd like that. The jury would deliberate and come back with a guilty verdict in less than 2 hours.
What?
Now, the jury would ask the judge for mercy in regards to her sentencing, but the judge would be all, yeah, off with her head!
Really?
Just kidding.
Oh.
But he would sentence her to hang and pencil in the date for January 7th. Now, she would be the first woman to be hung in Hamilton ever.
They really hung her?
So she would head back to jail and immediately hire herself a lawyer, probably one who already had a piece of her, to appeal for her sentence. Her lawyer would make the argument that at no time did the police let Evelyn know that everything she said could be used against her in a murder trial. All 5 court justices would agree and set aside Evelyn's conviction and have her start a new trial without her bits to the police as evidence.
Her bits is in her vagina too?
That was in evidence. And man, did they do things quickly, because trial number 2 starts on the 24th of February.
Damn.
And again, she's tried alone, but this time the prosecution can't use her waffly statements.
Did she use syrup?
The defense was that it really looked like Donald did it and that Evelyn might have known about it, maybe even been an accessory after the fact, but they weren't charging her for accessory, they were charging her with murder. In his closing statement, he would state to the jury that they would not hang a dog with evidence like this.
Let alone a pretty little lady.
Well, and the jury would agree, and Evelyn would be acquitted on March 6th.
Oh.
Now, by this point, all of the articles in the paper made outside the courthouse, mob style. Every time she's coming and going is like, just picture all the bulbs flashing, like just lots of noise, lots of chaos, all the things. There was even one elderly woman who packed her purse with icy mud that she planned to throw at Evelyn if she got close enough.
What is icy mud? Just cold mud? Or are they frozen mud balls?
I feel like she just threw stuff into her purse that she could throw. So it was mud and it was cold. So I thought that was the weirdest shit to have in a newspaper article because why would you do that? But I didn't see any reports of that actually happening, so I don't know if she just didn't go close enough for a good shot or she hit somebody else with it. But other than a report made that an elderly lady was outside the courthouse snickering
with a purse full of mud.
Snickering with a purse full of mud, waiting for a good shot.
Wow.
But that same article would describe the outside the courthouse like similar to a herd of buffalo when they were trying to let people in. But obviously you can't let everybody in, so it's just like everybody was shoving and trying to be the one who got a good seat.
They were really lacking on entertainment.
Yeah. So she's acquitted of that. But not so fast, little lady. You get to have yourself a third trial for the murder of baby Peter. That would start March 24th. And talk about speedy. You figure she just finished that one February 24th. Now, even though her attorney would go to work saying that the evidence was circumstantial and went on about how she's a single mother and life is hard and blah, 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 the jury would find her guilty on a lesser charge of manslaughter the following day.
That's so fast.
Yeah. The judge would sentence her to life imprisonment, the max for a manslaughter conviction. Now, the day after the verdict, psychiatrist Peter Flinslensen...
Okay. Not sure if you just made that up. Pretty sure you did.
Just said it like that. The next day, her psychiatrist would go...
You're not going to try that name again, Mr. Flansen?
I'm trying to redo the whole sentence. The day after that verdict, though, psychiatrist Robert Flinlayson would give her a look-see and determine that Evelyn had the mental age of 13 and an IQ in the low 80s.
Either he thought she was really dumb, or all the people that were porking her are disgusting.
Yes, I would say all of the above. And then it was like, you know what, that makes sense why when she was talking to the police officers that...
She had no filter?
Yeah, she's an idiot. She wasn't... Well, actually, I had so many thoughts because her mom doing the whole, she's not real good in the schooling.
Oh.
No wonder. But then it's just like, she wasn't the bright child, but it's just like...
Her mom is disgusting.
Mm-hmm.
Her mom should have been brought up on charges.
Now, the end of March 1947, Bill would have his trial, and he'd be acquitted for both the murder of John and baby Peter. Now, Donald would plead guilty to being an accessory after the fact to John and would get a 5-year sentence. Now, you know how they don't like to keep the ladies in prison, because...
They sure don't. They're too pretty for jail.
And she's got plenty of work still to do for the community. So she'd get granted parole in 1958 after just 11 years in the clink. She would take on a different identity and disappear from the public eye. Now, she would still be reporting to her parole officer. She just is in disguise.
Because she got fat.
Then in 1985, she'd be officially pardoned and her file sealed completely.
What?
So I don't know what happens, but it's just like, I find it interesting.
She fucked a judge real good.
She sure did! Well, she already was having dinner with the sheriff. So it's just like... She worked her way up.
Damn.
But that was Evelyn Dicks.
How old was the baby?
So I feel like she killed him immediately after she squirted him out.
I'm surprised she didn't get off of that charge then. Because they could have claimed it was like stillborn.
So I feel like...
Or SIDS. They claimed everything was SIDS in the 60s and 70s.
That was before SIDS.
Can you imagine how many people went to jail then because of SIDS?
But I also feel like she is a moron, and she talked.
I was talking about her attorney.
Yeah, but I feel like
she wouldn't let him put it in her butt, so he didn't try so hard.
Yeah. Or maybe they thought that they wouldn't find her guilty.
Yeah, but you would have thought that they would have used a better defense of the baby was stillborn, the baby passed in his sleep, and that's why she encased him in concrete, because she couldn't part with him.
Yeah. Well, I don't think it helps when your mom's willing to testify that the dad said she's not bringing home another baby, and the fact that she told them he was put up for adoption, that you figure if he died, she could have told her mom and been like, he's dead. And considering she had a stillborn baby a year before,
yeah,
they knew about that one. But she's a dumbass.
She's just special needs. She took too many dicks to the face.
She nearly was.
She was oxygen deprived.
Well, technically, she was a dumbass before. That's why her mom was like, we're going to invest in her education so that she can work her way up real high. And then they put her into that private school with the snooty fluties. And then we're like, she's fucking stupid, but she's pretty. And then, light bulb, let's peddle her ass on the streets, but just for a high-end dollar.
Her mom's disgusting.
She really was, because then when she's just like, I found somebody to marry me, and she's like, you're not going to marry some poor son bitch that works with your pa. Oh, but if you were wondering how, like, okay, so after Evelyn gets arrested and she's not talking to the police anymore, that it's speculated that Donald did it, even though she was trying to blame Bill, because since Donald and John worked for the same place, that John must have figured out that Donald was stealing. And he figured Donald didn't like his daughter's husband anyway, so he was more than willing to take care of the problem. They're already estranged, so when...
Maybe he's blackmailing him. Maybe because he wanted his wife back.
Yeah.
And he was blackmailing Donald to try to get Evelyn back, and then that wasn't working because Evelyn wasn't going to go back to some poor stone bitch.
Mm-hmm. So Evelyn, she didn't give a shit anyway, because I don't even think she liked John anyway.
I don't think she liked men.
Probably not. She liked her things. But that was what was speculated of what probably happened, because technically his murder is never really solved. So, other than they know he's dead.
It's really sad for his family.
Yeah.
Wow. I didn't realize we were going to start the morning with
weirdness. I told you it was a lot. There were turns and then turns. And when I was like, then there was a baby in the attic, I was like, oh shit. Because I even believed her story of she put the baby up for adoption.
Well,
but I blame that midwife show. So I was like, oh, okay, that's feasible. And then I was like, oh my God, she killed it.
It's really sick.
It really is. But I kind of am curious if she wouldn't have been prostituted out by her mother. If, like, you know how you can suffer trauma and then, like, mentally you don't grow beyond that chunk? I'm curious at what point she was peddling her daughter as a prostitute, and if it's just, like, that trauma started early because of her mother.
Yeah.
Or if she, again, her not being a prostitute, she'd still end up the mind of a 13-year-old.
She probably, I hate to say this, but still would have ended up on the same track she was on of being a cum dumpster.
Just lower wages.
But it would have been for the poor man.
Yeah. And she would have kept churning out them babies.
Or actually, she might have been married off.
Yeah.
She would have just kept cranking out babies.
Mm-hmm. But that was pretty much it. I just thought it was a wild case.
The title of this one has to have dicks in it, since it's throughout your entire case.
I like that. Well, I don't even know. Well, again, when I was reading it, it was just like, wow, this case is crazy. But it goes down as one of Canada's most, like, I don't want to say notorious, but, like, you know how every now and then there's those cases that people just can't get enough of? That was that for Canada. And people couldn't read enough about her or know enough about her, and they were always...
They couldn't get enough of the dick. Neither could she.
They couldn't hear enough about her, and the news would be all, it's because she's so pretty, but I'm going to send you the email. And I did I was expecting, like, this stunningly pretty lady, and I know this isn't the first time we've had defendants that are like, the prettiest murder defendant that you'll ever see, kind of nonsense in the paper.
So I took it she ain't so pretty.
Well, I don't...
It's Claire's cattiness coming out.
I didn't understand it.
So you wouldn't have been hiding in that bathroom, smelling other people's turdins, trying to find out what she was wearing?
No, but it's in the email.
That reminds me of the one case we did, my leaky brain hole, of I don't know if it was your case or mine now. I think it was mine. But the woman was hung, and they had to build like a new gallows so that they could pack more people in because so many people showed up to see her hung. And then they were commenting on her dress.
Oh.
Like, she's getting a noose around her neck, and they're commenting on her clothing.
I think
And
that was
like,
mine, and I want to say it was the lady who with the soaps and the cakes. Because remember, during her trial, they ended up having her carve up a body, and she did it in a real quick time, and to the horror of the fellers. No, maybe it was the one where she killed her husband by kicking him in the nuts. But you know what? They did weird things back in the day when it was like advertising of people would donate, or not donate, but well, kind of donate whatever they were wearing last, because then the news would report, this is what they're wearing. See him sway? Doesn't that hang lie nicely on his body? Wrinkle free.
Dude, I'm looking at your pictures.
Oh yeah, disregard the shark one. That was a wrong picture.
Well, I haven't gotten to that one. But the one where it says where his body was found, it looks like there's a woman in a nightgown with her head down.
It's just a tree stump. I mean, I guess she's not ugly. I just thought it was funny.
She definitely looks squishy, though.
Yeah, I think the first picture, she looks like that was a before. And then the second one, I was like, oh yeah, she's getting squishier.
She looks like she could be related to her mother.
She might have.
I'm not leaving that.
That's all I've got. Any other thoughts?
No, just that was a very fitting name for her.
Yeah. Well, she felt like dicks were in her future since they were already in her current, so more dicks, and that's when she met John Dick, and she's like, it means something. But still, I feel bad for that feller, because he met not a nice lady.
I hope he at least beat her or something. I hope he was a piece of shit that deserved it.
No, I feel like he was an older feller looking for
a wife
to make himself a life.
Yeah.
And he was even willing to put aside the fact that she was the tramp of Hamilton, even if she charged a high price. And I feel like he really liked her and fell in love with her pretty face was, which is why he kind of spun a little bit of a tale and making it seem like he was better off than he really was.
Because he really enjoyed a hot dog down a hallway.
Mm-hmm. Well, maybe she knew like a fancy tongue trick, but
that's disgusting.
She's too stupid to realize that her dad and him work for the same company. But I guess he's skimming off the top anyway, so... But that was Evelyn Dicks.
Yeah. I've never heard of a better name for somebody. It was like her last name was her destiny.
But...
Well, thanks for that.
Good luck with that editing. I apologize.
We hope you enjoyed today's episode of Homicide Hobbies. If we made you laugh, if we made you cry, or if we mind-fucked you for the day, then we thank you for listening. Please write a review on whatever you're listening to us on. Tell your friends, tell your family, tell your coworkers. We're freaking awesome. And join us next week for another episode of Homicide Hobbies. I'm Andy.
And I'm Claire.
That's all we've got.